Family events always made my skin itch. Too many eyes watching, too many fake hugs, too many people pretending to love you, only to whisper behind your back. Please stay with me as I tell you my story. Don't forget to like, share with your family and friends, and subscribe to this channel. Now back to my story. Still, I went out of respect, out of duty, out of not wanting to give them more reason to talk. The hall was massive, chandeliers overhead, satin-covered chairs lined in perfect rows, a giant screen flashing photos of the celebrated host, and waiters circulating with trays of juice and small chops. Over 300 guests filled the room, their laughter bouncing off the walls, their makeup perfect, their shoes polished. I sat somewhere near the middle, close enough to see everything, far enough to feel invisible, and honestly, I preferred it that way. Until I saw her, my cousin, the same one who had been texting, calling, and guilt-tripping me for the past month to send her money. First, she asked nicely, then came the emotional blackmail, then the threats disguised as jokes. I had said no, repeatedly, firmly, but she didn't hear no, she heard keep pushing. So when I saw her walking toward the microphone, heels clicking, hair bouncing, grin spreading, I knew something dramatic was about to unfold. My stomach turned, but I kept my face blank. I was used to people like her. After all, the type who believed pressure worked better than honesty. She reached the mic, tapped it twice, then raised her voice with a fake giggle. Hey everyone, my amazing cousin is here today. And guess what? He's finally going to give me that money I've been asking for. I blinked, the room didn't laugh. They didn't clap. Instead, silence fell like a hammer. Heads slowly turned, conversations stopped. Every eye in the room landed on me, curious, judging, confused. My chest tightened. I could see family members shifting awkwardly in their seats, giving each other glances. I could practically hear their inner thoughts. Will he give in? Will he deny her? Is he really that stingy? But beneath all that pressure, something in me clicked. I wasn't going to be broken. Not today. My cousin's voice rang through the speakers like a siren, slicing through the soft hum of conversation and clinking glasses. I didn't move at first. I didn't even blink. It felt like time had stalled, like the event had paused just to spotlight this bizarre and humiliating moment. From my seat, I could see the change ripple across the room, people leaning forward, others twisting in their chairs to get a better look at me. One uncle arched an eyebrow, a distant aunt covered her mouth, trying to hide her shocked grin. My mother's expression tightened from across the room, but she said nothing, as always. My cousin was smiling, confident, basking in her moment of public performance. I watched her scan the crowd like she was on stage, waiting for applause. But it never came. Instead, there was a tension so thick you could slice it with a plastic knife. She mistook the silence for suspense, not disapproval. She thought everyone was waiting for a fairy tale ending where I'd rise like a hero, pull out my wallet and make it rain. What she didn't know was that this wasn't a fairy tale, and I was not the prince in her story. She looked directly at me, microphone still in hand. Come on, cousin, tell everyone you've got me. The smirk on her face made my blood pressure spike. She had cornered me in front of hundreds of people, turning a private issue into a public spectacle. She expected me to cave, to hand her what she wanted, to avoid the embarrassment of being labeled stingy. But what she didn't understand, what so many people never understand, is that no is a full sentence. I stood up slowly, took a breath, and looked around. I met the eyes of those staring, nodded politely, and then clearly and calmly I said, no, just one word. You could have heard a pin drop. My cousin's face went pale. For the first time all evening, she looked unsure of herself. Her jaw twitched, her eyes darted around, trying to gauge the room. The murmurs started immediately, low and quick, whispers bouncing from one corner to another like wind stirring dry leaves. But I didn't wait to hear what they said. I had already turned away. I walked slowly toward the exit, each step echoing louder than the last in my mind. The eyes were still on me, their judgment crawling up my back like cold fingers. Some people were probably stunned by my boldness, others offended by my refusal. But me, I felt clear, steady, anchored. Still, I could hear my cousin's voice behind me. Seriously, you're really going to embarrass me like this? She shouted in front of everyone. After all I've done for you. That line almost made me laugh. All she's done for me, if by done, she meant months of manipulation, guilt-tripping, emotional blackmail, and trying to weaponize the sympathy of strangers. Then yes, she had done a lot. But I didn't turn around. As I neared the door, I caught whispers growing louder. Why wouldn't he just help her? That's so humiliating for her. Didn't he say no before? Why is she doing this publicly? I stepped outside, the blast of cool evening air washing over my face. My hands were slightly shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. My heart pounded like I'd just run a mile. I got into my car, slammed the door shut, and sat still. I stared at the dashboard, trying to make sense of the storm I just walked through. I knew the backlash was coming. I knew the family group chats would light up like fireworks. I knew the gossip would spread faster than the appetizers had. But I didn't regret saying no. I didn't owe her anything, especially not my silence nor my dignity. When I finally picked up my phone, my notifications were out of control. Texts, missed calls, DMs. A few messages asked if I was okay. Most didn't, most were angry, passive-aggressive, or outright insulting. How could you do that to her? She's family, that was cold. Even if you didn't want to help, why humiliate her? Funny, isn't it? No one asked why she thought it was okay to humiliate me. No one asked what kind of person forces someone's hand in front of hundreds of people and expects praise for it. But I wasn't surprised. I had learned one thing very early in life. When you don't bend to people's expectations, they'll break your name instead. I sat in my car for a long time before starting the engine. There's a certain stillness after a storm. A silence that doesn't bring peace, but leaves you suspended between rage and relief. That's where I was, caught in the aftershock. My fingers hovered over my phone, debating whether to open the group chat or just delete the app entirely. I didn't. Instead, I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't look angry. I didn't look triumphant. I just looked tired, tired of expectations, tired of being the nice one everyone thought they could push, tired of being guilted into kindness like I owed the world something for simply existing. The sound of laughter erupted from inside the hall. People were already moving on. The music had resumed, her little scene was over, and the show had continued without me. That's how it always went in this family. Performances, masks, then silence. I pulled out of the venue slowly, watching the lights grow smaller in my rearview mirror. As I drove through the quiet night, the rush of adrenaline faded, and something else crept in: clarity. I didn't owe anyone an explanation for setting boundaries, not even family, especially not family who used public shame as a tactic. Somewhere along the way, I had been taught that saying no meant you were cold, selfish, or heartless. But what about those who asked too much, who demanded more than you could give, who thought love meant compliance? I arrived at my flat just after 10 p.m. The street was quiet. The only sound was the hum of a nearby generator and the soft shuffle of my footsteps up the stairs. I closed my door, locked it behind me, and leaned against it for a breath. For the first time in a while, I felt like I had protected something important. Not money, not pride, but myself. And that mattered more than being liked. It mattered more than keeping the peace. It mattered more than fake applause from 300 guests who didn't know the whole story. I tossed my keys onto the kitchen counter and slumped into the couch, letting out a slow exhale. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the room. I hadn't turned on the lights somehow. The dim glow from the hallway outside felt more appropriate for the mood I was in. Then came the inevitable. Buzz, 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 buzz. My phone lit up like fireworks. I picked it up and immediately regretted it. Hundreds of messages, family group chats, missed calls, Instagram DMs, even Facebook notifications from people I hadn't spoken to in years. It was like someone had sent out a bat signal that I was the villain of the week. The first few messages were just confused. Hey, what happened at the event? Did she really ask you for money like that? Are you okay? Then came the judgment. You embarrassed her in front of everyone. Couldn't you have just helped her privately afterward? It's your own blood. You should be ashamed. And finally, the insults. You're cold. So selfish. I hope you never need help and get treated the same. I didn't respond. I couldn't, because if I did, I knew I'd say something I couldn't take back. But what really got me wasn't the messages from people I barely knew. It was the ones from those I expected better from. An older cousin, who once told me she admired my strength, called me emotionally unavailable. An aunt who had asked me for favors more times than I could count, said I lacked compassion. Not one person asked why she did what she did. Not one person called her out for trying to shame me into submission. It reminded me how selective people can be with their outrage, how they choose the easy villain when the truth is too messy. I scrolled through the messages for a few more minutes, letting the words blur together, then tossed my phone across the couch and leaned back. Let them talk. Let them judge. Because I knew something they didn't. I had said no not out of hate, but out of self-respect. And I was just getting started. By the next morning, the entire extended family had turned into a courtroom, and I was the main defendant. No one cared about the months I spent politely declining. No one remembered how many times I'd already helped in the past. All they saw was a headline: "Cousin refuses to help poor girl in front of 300 people." Never mind the fact that she wasn't poor, that she had tried to trap me, that she'd made a scene not out of desperation, but entitlement. The family WhatsApp group was a battlefield. One aunt wrote, "What happened to unity? Is this how we treat each other now?" An uncle chimed in, "Your cousin is just a girl. You should have handled that with grace." Someone even threw in, "She's younger than you should know better." Ah yes, the classic scapegoat tactics: age guilt, emotional manipulation, and good old-fashioned respectability politics. Even people I hadn't seen in years suddenly felt qualified to weigh in. I don't know what the full story is, but this is just sad. Blood is blood, no matter what. I stayed silent. Every time I typed a message, I'd delete it. Not because I was unsure of myself, but because I realized explaining myself wouldn't matter. These people weren't asking to understand. They were asking to convince me to feel guilty, to apologize for not bowing under pressure, to undo my embarrassing choice. But I wasn't going to shrink for anyone's comfort. In a private message, my younger cousin sent a single sentence: "Thank you for standing up for yourself." It was the first moment I smiled since the event. One person. That's all it took to remind me that truth doesn't need a crowd to be valid. And the truth was this: you're allowed to say no, even to family, especially when boundaries are being stomped on. I wasn't going to live my life trying to meet everyone's expectations. And I sure wasn't going to reward bad behavior just because we share DNA. Let them talk. Let them twist the story. I knew mine, and I wasn't changing it for anyone. Just when I thought I'd drown in the sea of opinions, a few unexpected life rafts came floating my way. It started with a text from someone I barely knew, one of the event photographers. "Hey, I don't know you well, but I saw what happened. That was really unfair. You handled it with class, respect. It took me by surprise." Someone outside the family bubble had seen the same thing I did and didn't let the noise distort the moment. Then came a message from my former coworker. "I saw your name being dragged in that Facebook comment thread. Just so you know, I would have done the exact same thing." People need to stop thinking money equals obligation. I hadn't realized how far the gossip had traveled. Apparently, someone had uploaded a snippet of the moment online. No faces, just voices, but the captions were filled with judgment, assumptions, and armchair moralists. Yet buried in the comment section were strangers who understood. People who had been publicly guilt-tripped. People who knew what it meant to draw a line, even if it meant being painted as the villain. Some wrote, "Family doesn't mean doormat. Good for him, boundaries matter." She tried to emotionally blackmail him and failed. Now she's upset. It was strange, really. Support from people I'd never met felt more honest than the silence from those who'd known me for years. Even my neighbor, Mr. Hale, an elderly man who mostly kept to himself, stopped me as I was getting groceries from my car. "Heard what happened," he said, adjusting his cap. "Proud of you. Takes guts not to fold when the whole room wants you to." I nodded, unsure what to say, but something about his words stayed with me. For the first time in days, I felt seen, not as the villain, not as the heartless cousin, but as a human being making a hard call. And it reminded me of something important. Sometimes the people you expect to defend you won't, but the universe has a way of sending you voices that cut through the chaos. You just have to be quiet enough to hear them. 2 days after the incident, I woke up to a private message request on social media. It was from her, my cousin, the one who thought it was a good idea to publicly pressure me into giving her money in front of hundreds of people. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity got the better of me. The message read, "I didn't think you'd actually say no. I panicked. I've been under a lot of pressure, and I thought if I made it public, you wouldn't want to embarrass me." There it was, the confession disguised as an explanation wrapped in soft guilt. No apology, no accountability, just justification. I stared at the message, wondering what kind of person thought manipulating someone on stage, at an event with 300 witnesses, was a better option than asking directly or, better yet, respecting a previous no. Then she followed up, "You didn't have to embarrass me like that." I blinked at the screen. I embarrassed her. It was like watching someone trip over their own lies and blame the floor for being too solid. I didn't respond. Not then. I didn't owe her a reaction. Because deep down, I knew the message wasn't about making amends. It was about salvaging her pride. Her image had cracked, and she wanted someone else to hold the glue. But the part that truly stunned me was how others began picking sides. Some of our relatives started reposting her version of events, how she was struggling financially, how I had abandoned her in her time of need, how I had used the moment to humiliate her. She was rewriting the story, and people were buying it. That's when I realized this wasn't about money. This was about control. She had counted on the performance to corner me, and when it didn't work, she tried to retell the narrative until it did. But what she didn't know was that I'd spent too long playing nice to protect people's egos. This time, I was standing by my truth. Let her spin whatever version she wanted. I wasn't going to play the villain just because her plan didn't work. The world kept spinning. The drama cooled, at least on the surface. But the aftershocks lingered. I noticed the shift, the cousins who stopped calling, the relatives who once sent random memes but now only gave me read receipts. Silence had a new weight. And yet I wasn't broken. In fact, I started to feel something I hadn't in a long time: peace. I stopped checking the group chats. I muted the noise. I poured myself into things that grounded me: work, early morning walks, playlists that reminded me who I was before all this mess. I started journaling, not because I needed to vent, but because I wanted to remember how I got through it. Boundaries weren't walls. They were doors with locks, and for the first time in a long while, I decided who got to knock. Some people reached out to reconcile. A few cousins messaged quietly, saying things like, "You were right," or "I didn't know the full story. I didn't rub it in. I just thanked them and moved on." Growth doesn't always come with closure, and not every burned bridge needs to be rebuilt. And as for her, she went quiet. No more messages, no more online rants. I heard she was embarrassed by the way things turned out. Maybe she finally realized that public shaming doesn't make a person generous. It just reveals how desperate you were to manipulate. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need apologies. I just needed space. And in that space, I found myself again. I decided to write all this not for sympathy, but for someone out there who needs to hear it. You are allowed to say no, even to family, even if it makes people uncomfortable, even if it's in front of 300 people. What happened to me was dramatic, messy and unexpected, but it was also liberating. It reminded me that real strength doesn't come from pleasing everyone. It comes from knowing your values and refusing to be bullied out of them. The messages eventually slowed. The whispers faded, but I walked taller. I slept better. I laughed more genuinely. That moment at the event didn't break me. It built me. I became the version of myself that little me would have admired. The one who doesn't flinch under pressure, who doesn't cave to guilt, who doesn't measure kindness by how much she can give away. And now when I look back, I don't feel regret. I feel proud. I hope my cousin finds her own peace one day. I hope the people who judged, without knowing the truth, learn to ask better questions. But none of that is my responsibility. My responsibility is me. So if you've ever been shamed, guilt-tripped, or pressured into betraying your boundaries, know this: you don't owe anyone a performance. You don't have to justify your peace. And most importantly, you're not the villain for choosing yourself. Please like, share with your family and friends, and subscribe to our channel for more stories.